behind your cross as I seek to bring forth your word today. Lord God, let me only speak your words. Lord God, if I try to bring my own message or my own agenda, I pray that you strike me silent. Lord, I pray that I bring forth the words you want heard today. In Jesus' name. I was thinking maybe I should have asked the kids when they came up. How many people made their bed this morning?
I did.
How many people had somebody else make their bed for them? No, I said.
Yes, Sunday.
That'll make sense by the end of the morning, trust me. I'm going to hop right into our scripture this morning. I'm going to look at the resurrection story as told in the book of John, chapter 20, starting at verse 1, if anybody would like to follow along. Again, I've been using the New Living Translation lately. I certainly don't believe one translation's better than another, but I like to use different ones at different times. Starting at verse 1. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stopped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And to just interject in the middle of this reading, the original language, cry, she was wailing in grief. Crying doesn't quite sum up what Mary was doing. Mary was standing outside the tomb wailing in grief. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." Then she gave them his message. As we look at this passage this morning, as I was thinking and praying about preparing today, I was thinking, most people know the resurrection story. Churchgoers and non-churchgoers alike usually at least have an idea of the story. So I wanted to go a little deeper, a little behind, pick some different things out, perhaps. As I looked at Mary and her encounter here, in verse 2, she says, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Mary walked with Christ. She had heard his teachings. She had heard him talking about that they would destroy the temple and he'd rise it up. She still didn't get it. Jesus' body was gone, and the only thing that could come to her mind was they stole his body. Right? Now, she also knew that there had been Roman guards guarding the tomb all night. But still, her first thought was they stole his body. How easy the world can get us to think its way and turn us away from thinking the way God tells us to think. Jesus had spent time with Mary. He had tried to form her thinking that she thought how God wanted her to think. Yet this world and the logic of this world told her, oh no, the body isn't there, somebody stole the body. So that's how she thought. So on this Easter Sunday, this Resurrection Sunday, I exhort you and I implore you, and I really, really try to get you to think the way God wants you to think instead of the way the world wants you to think. I've seen miracles in my life that the world will try to say, oh, well, no, this was this or that was, and they'll try to get me to think a worldly way to explain it. But because of faith, that was a miracle, that was God. You can think that if you want, but you're wrong. Couldn't help it. Thoughts strike me sometimes. I thought of Peter and probably John, the disciple Jesus loved, running to the tomb. And people of two different speeds running together. Now, I'm not saying that I'm Peter or I'm John and Evan's the other, but I kind of get this image in that moment of Evan and I running together. And Evan having the sense to, before he just runs into a dark cave, kind of stop and have a look. And me being the one, I might not be the fastest, but I'll jump into the middle of anything, both feet first sometimes, and I'd be the one straight in and see what was going on. But either way, both of the disciples ran because they knew that there was more to this than just that somebody had stolen Christ's body. Simon Peter, he also noticed the linen wrappings lying there while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. That passage struck me and kind of sent me doing some rummaging and some study this week. To be honest, this is how I often make the bed, right? Mostly because Louise is still in it asleep or just getting in, because the only time we see each other is to sleep these days with our schedules. But there was a time that I was when I was in the reserves, you could bounce the quarter off my bed. But that's only when I was on duty with, if they weren't inspecting me, this is what the bed was often like. But this passage says that while the wrappings were a mess, the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded, was folded neatly and set aside. Now that's only mentioned in the Gospel of John, but just because it was such a stark contrast of, the linen wrappings were there, but that was folded, I said, there's something here, so I went looking. And in that time, if a person was wealthy, if a master had servants, and the servants would serve them their meal, and the servants would kind of wait on scene until the master was done to clear it away. Because as soon as the master was done, they were expected to clear it away. But if they started trying to clear it away before the master was done, they were in trouble. And if the master took their napkin, the cloth that they would use for their face, and threw it down, they were done. If they threw it down, they got up and they walked away, they were done. And the servant could come in and clear everything away, clear the evidence of the meal away, because the master was not returning. But if the master got up and folded their napkin, placed it on their plate, and got up and walked away, that was the signal to the servant the master wasn't done. They were coming back. They were going to do something else, but they were coming back. So the fact that the cloth that covered Jesus' face was folded and laid separate meant he is coming back. Both to the tomb and to the world. His business wasn't finished. He wasn't abandoning us, throwing in the towel, throwing in the napkin and saying, I'm done. I'm done of them. No, he was saying, I'll be back to help you get it all together again. Verse 9 says, for until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Skipping ahead a little, Mary says again later to the angels, because they have taken away my Lord. Mary still wasn't getting that Jesus had risen from the dead. But Peter and John, in verse 9, for until then they hadn't understood, which is telling us in that moment of coming into the tomb, seeing it empty, seeing the burial clothes thrown in a pile, but the head covering folded neatly, in that moment, Peter and John realized he had risen. Can you imagine? Put yourself in one of their shoes in that moment. Imagine you walked with Jesus for 3 years, listening to his teachings, listening to him teach about the Old Testament, listening to his parables, soaking in everything you could of him, and he died and you still weren't really getting it, and you were full of grief and sorrow, and then you come into his tomb and it's like, whoa, he's alive again. Can you imagine that moment? Joy unspeakable it must have been. Tinged with some confusion, like, where is he? I want to see him. But the joy that they would have known. But even after that, Mary was still confused. But then comes something that I find beautiful here. Verse 17. Mary has come to the point that she now knows that Jesus was raised from the dead. She hasn't come to a full understanding yet, but she has seen Jesus face to face. She's cried out to him, "Teacher." And Jesus tells her, "Don't cling to me, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father. My God and your God. My Father and your Father. My Father and your Father? That must mean that we're siblings. In that moment, even despite her confusion, because of her faith, Christ said, my Father and your Father. I have a brother back home in Nova Scotia. Or maybe I've been here in PEI long enough now that I say he's back there, this is that. My home's in heaven. But when our parents died, we were co-heirs. Now we grew up broke, so there was nothing for us. But if there had have been, my brother and I were co-heirs of our parents. We both had equal footing for what our parents would leave to us. To be co-heirs in this world is about worldly things, money, and things. To be co-heirs with Christ is to be getting ready to go strolling down the gold pavement. Because to be co-heirs with Christ is to be adopted as a child of God. To be adopted as a child of God means, same as death had no power over Christ, when we become co-heirs with Christ, death has no power over us. And when death doesn't hold power over us, then we know true freedom. Then we know what it's like to live without fear. Because we know whatever this world throws at us, right up to and including physical death, means nothing, because we know that our next breath will be face to face with Jesus in heaven when we become co-heirs with Christ. Mary didn't have it all figured out. Mary wasn't a theologian. Mary wasn't a studious person who had everything memorized and, I know what's going on. That wasn't Mary. But she had faith. She had faith. She knew she needed Christ. She knew she had done things that had broken the heart of her God, and she was sorry for them. And because of her faith and her sorrow for wronging God, translation sins, when Christ met her face to face, the first person that he appeared to when he came back was one of the people who was confused about what was going on. And he said, hey sister, God in heaven's waiting for you. My Father, your Father, Dad's waiting for you when you're ready. That's a beautiful thing. God didn't send his Son to die and stay dead. God didn't send his Son to just resurrect him and show us his power. God sent his Son to die, raise from the dead, so that we can be forgiven and we can stand before God on that day and hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on in. The party's going. Someone else just came to faith. And ask the worship team to come. We're going to sing one last song. That leaves